The U.S. has confirmed that its military has carried out a large-scale operation in Venezuela. President Donald Trump said Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro was captured and flown out of the country by U.S. troops and law enforcement authorities. The announcement came a few hours after reports of explosions in the capital.
This user-generated video appears to show multiple explosions lighting up the night sky over Caracas. Other videos show U.S. aircraft flying low across the Venezuelan capital.
We felt planes flying and explosions. Several explosions, at least 8 or 10. And now I went out to look around. And now all you see is smoke, smelling like chemicals.
A few hours later, President Donald Trump claimed on his Truth Social site that U.S. forces have, quote, captured Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife and brought them out of the country, following what he described as a large-scale strike. That claim has not been independently verified, but Venezuela's vice president acknowledged that the current whereabouts of Maduro is unknown.
In the face of this brutal attack, we have no knowledge of the whereabouts of President Nicolás Maduro and First Lady Celia Flores. We demand from the Trump administration immediate proof of life.
Venezuela's government accused Washington of attacking both civilian and military installations in multiple states across the country. The escalation comes after repeated warnings from Donald Trump, who had threatened land operations in Venezuela. Venezuela's defense minister, Vladimir Padrino, says the country will resist the presence of foreign troops.
The free, independent, and sovereign Venezuela rejects with all its strength, with its liberation history, the presence of these foreign troops that have left death, pain, and destruction in their path.
Before news of his reported capture, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro had declared what he called a state of external disturbance. The emergency measure allows the government to suspend certain rights and expand the role of the armed forces. These latest events follow weeks of U.S. military action targeting alleged Venezuelan drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean. Maduro had accused Washington of seeking regime change and access to Venezuela's oil reserves, while the United States charged him with narco-terrorism. If his removal from Venezuela is confirmed, it will mark a major regional escalation by the United States in South America.
Earlier, we talked to Noris Soto, a journalist based in the Venezuelan capital, Caracas, and I asked her what her morning was like there.
I was woken up at 2 a.m. in the morning. I didn't see many explosions because I live in the suburbs, but of course, I heard the aircraft like flying at a really low level to be normal, and that's what woke me up. And after that, my dogs, I have 2 dogs, and they started to bark loudly, and that's what got me worried because you know that we had the holidays just 2 days ago, and I thought like, oh well, this could be like another part of the celebration. When I heard the explosions, I thought it was like fireworks. But then we came to the realization that in fact was a direct attack on Venezuela, and that's when our family started to invading our phones, like phones ringing loudly and non-stop. And well, I've been working ever since then.
Once you got a sense of what was going on, was it apparent that the attack was specifically directed against Venezuelans' political leadership?
I got the sense only 15 minutes after I woke up, because all the images, the videos, the footage, I have a lot of family and friends living nearby, and they started sending me all their videos and their footage of the situation. But at the beginning, it was unclear if it was an attack from the U.S. or if it was a coup d'etat, an auto coup d'etat. which was one of the first hypotheses that people were circulating around. And of course, we had to wait until Trump said on Truth Social that, in fact, it was the U.S. who carried out this attack on seven main points of military facilities.
So for a short period of time there, some people thought this might actually be a coup in process.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Many people thought that it was a coup d'etat because there's a lot of discontent on the Venezuelans' side towards the Maduro regime. And it has been so for a long time. So there was a point where Venezuelans thought it could be a coup d'etat. And then Maduro, the remaining officials from the Maduro regime staying in the country put a statement, a release, saying that it was a military attack from the U.S. and they were rejecting this attack and claiming that they would defend the country as well as they can.
How are people in Venezuela reacting in general now?
At the beginning, it was shock. People, because it was too early in the morning, it was like at 2 a.m. in the morning in Venezuela. People weren't able to go out to the streets, and it was basically the middle of the night, like you see in the footage. It was very, very dark. So people were very cautious in terms of going out, but But right now, I have some reports of people already on the streets trying to buy goods to purchase food, long lines in gas stations, and we journalists have been very active recommending people on our social media to stay home, to stay put, to stay calm, because this is not the moment to go out on the street. We don't know what the reaction from the remaining officials from Maduro are going to do. We don't know if they will activate the militia, if they will put on a curfew, and it's going to turn out to be very dangerous for Venezuela to just go out recklessly.
You're asking yourself a lot of questions, and I imagine all across Venezuela, people are asking a whole string of them. What happens now? Who will lead the country? Who do you think might fill the power vacuum in a post-Maduro Venezuela?
Well, this is a question that I've been answering in other interventions that have been going on so far. If this was let me talk about the constitution in Venezuela. If this was a normal situation, we would have the vice president, in this case, Delcy Rodriguez, taking power. And if she was unable to do so, the other person who would have to take the power would be the president of the Congress, of the National Assembly, in this case, her brother, Jorge Rodriguez. But if we follow the rules of the results of the 2024 elections, which gave Edmundo González as the winner of the elections, he would be the one who have to take the power. But let's remember that both María Corina Machado and Edmundo González are abroad, are out of the country. Edmundo is in Spain, and we don't know for sure in which part of the world is María Corina Machado. But if they were to return to the country, of course, it would be helped by the U.S. again, another deployment to bring them back, because I don't think that the remaining powers will keep open the airspace or let anyone in or out.
Do you think we can expect much resistance from Maduro's supporters?
That's for sure. We can expect them to try to control power and to seize power. We have seen the reactions in the middle of in the middle of the morning. It's not something I'm making up. We have seen reactions, statements. They have been talking. Even the public prosecutor said that he was demanding proof of life of Maduro. Diosdado Cabello said earlier that they would try to defend the nation. So we can expect them to even circle in close circles even more than they have been in the past year.
What about opposition leaders in Venezuela? Have any of them been heard from?
they have been, I think that they have been very cautious. They are trying to assess what the next step or what are the declarations that they need to do in order to seize this opportunity. This is a one in a kind opportunity. We have never seen this in the modern history of Venezuela. In the past 12 years, it has been the biggest opening for the opposition to actually take control. So there, I think that they will try to seize this momentum as better as they can, and that's why they haven't been so quickly as you might think or want in this situation to react or to talk.
Thank you. Noris Soto, a journalist there in the Venezuelan capital, Caracas. Earlier, we talked to Christopher Sabatini, a senior research fellow for Latin America, U.S. and the Americas program at Chatham House. We asked how this will likely be received in Venezuela.
I think for part of the population, they'll be happy to see that Nicolás Maduro is gone. He overwhelmingly lost an election last year that he stole, but it was proven by credible sources and confirmed by statisticians in Brazil and Spain that the opposition won the election. So he's not popular. I think the question is as to what extent this operation, especially in so much as it's affected civilians on the ground in Venezuela, will be received by Venezuelans. I think they'll be happy that Nicolás Maduro has left. But, the idea that this took a wave of bombings that went everywhere from El Hatillo outside Caracas to Caracas's Fuerte Tiuna to La Carlota Air Force Base, this maybe revives some form of a nationalistic, patriotic response. This is what we're seeing some elements of the military leadership in Venezuela call for right now to defend Venezuela's national sovereignty. I think that may touch a nerve among some Venezuelans, but I think most of them will be happy to see Nicolás Maduro leave. The question is what comes next, because yes, he's been removed from the country, but what's been left behind is a deeply corrupt administration and government that we're already seeing tensions and competition among them to succeed Nicolás Maduro and determine the future direction of any government in Venezuela. So, quite frankly, the Venezuelans' reaction to this news may depend very much on what happens in the next couple of days and certainly weeks, whether this leads to some form of transition that brings stability, security, and human rights to Venezuela. We won't know for a while, and I think that will be the test for many Venezuelans going forward.
Clearly lots of questions and certainly lots of observers trying to get into Donald Trump's head at the moment. What other interests might Trump have in the region? Might he be seeking further regime changes?
So let's take this first in the case of Venezuela. Trump has justified the buildup and now the removal of Nicolás Maduro for a number of reasons. Anti-narcotics, foreign influence in the hemisphere, and then simply the lack of legitimacy of the Nicolás Maduro government. Some of those are more true than the others. The narcotics allegations are really quite a stretch, and certainly an attempt to label this as a narco-terrorist regime is questionable. The blowing up of the drug boats, 35 or so drug boats, has occurred since September 2nd, and now this attack is quite likely, is definitely in violation, frankly, of international law. So what he really seeks is unclear. I think at the very least he needed at a certain point in this escalation, when it failed to provoke any sort of regime change that I think he was hoping for those 6 months that this buildup occurred. It didn't occur, so now he's stuck with having to do something. We don't know. I think, quite frankly, he'll try to patch this up and move on. It's not in Donald Trump's interest politically, and I think even personally, to be left holding the bag on a prolonged regime transition in Venezuela. Although there are elements within his government, especially Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who would like to see the Democratic opposition come to power as a result of these strikes and a result of the arrest of Nicolás Maduro. But that's really out of Donald Trump's control, quite frankly. And so, whether he's willing to engage in the sort of long-term sustained effort, whether it's military, political, diplomatic, economic, to see through a real democratic transition, which was not what will happen if this is left to Maduro's inner circle, including his vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, who recently gave, just a few hours ago, a telephone interview, is unclear. So we'll have to see how this plays out. But the next couple of days are going to be critical, not just for Venezuela, but how Donald Trump perceives his next options moving forward.
Christopher, you've made it very clear this is a divided country, and they may very well be people in Venezuela who are cheering this action by the United States. But do you think we can expect much resistance from those people who support Maduro?
That's a good question. I mean, in popular levels, he only received about a little over 30% of the vote, closer to 30, I think 37% of the vote in the elections last year. That may even be inflated because of concerns about repression, coercion of voters, and their concerns about stability and maintaining their public benefits or public employment. That said, yes, his removal will be well received. He's deeply unpopular in the country. The question is what are the options now? And we really don't know. So for many Venezuelans, I think they'll welcome this. For some, they will cling to this government. And that is primarily those who are in the inner circle. This is a government, and Donald Trump has repeated this, and he is correct. This is a government that's deeply infiltrated, even embedded in illicit activities, criminal networks, and even collaborating with the Colombian guerrilla group, the ELN. They will not want to part ways with their corrupt access to revenue and with their privileged position within the government. So yes, I fully expect them to try to cling to power, to try to negotiate some, if there has to be an exit, some exit that's favorable to them, but trying to avoid that exit, trying to maintain their access to ill-gotten gains, trying to avoid having to do jail time, as Nicolás Maduro will now probably have to do in the United States, and trying to avoid, if you will, being completely closed out of government should a democratic opposition be allowed into power. So that maybe not at a popular level, but at the level of the regime insiders and those engaged in illicit activities, they'll be trying to cling to power. I don't know whether they'll try to hold on to power via force, but it's very much in their interest right now to negotiate some form of a transition or even stability that favors them.
You say that what happens next in Venezuela is unclear, but are there specific names, particular leaders who you think might fill the power vacuum in a post-Maduro Venezuela?
It's a good question. So I would say keep an eye on three particular people, actually four. The brother and sister, Delcy Rodriguez being the sister, she's the vice president. Jorge Rodriguez is the president of the National Assembly. They are really the civilians within this military-dominated government. Delcy was the one who spoke via phone earlier today, asking for a proof of life of Nicolás Maduro. She's obviously become sort of the civilian spokesperson of this regime. But on the other hand, besides the brother and sister team, and in fact, according to the Constitution, presidential power should pass to Delcy Rodriguez, or if she's determined, because she's the vice president, determined illegitimate, and quite frankly, this is the government that was illegitimately elected, that would then pass, the presidency would then pass on to Jorge Rodriguez, the president of the National Assembly, but he too is considered part of the inner circle of Nicolás Maduro. He will also then not be considered legitimate. The other two people to keep an eye on are Diosdado Cabello, who's the interior minister, who spoke recently on the street, claiming that he and his armed forces are going to defend popular sovereignty and the people and national sovereignty of Venezuela, as well as Padrino Lopez, who also gave a press conference on Instagram that he taped and posted there, claiming that he's there to defend the regime. Those two individuals have access to the military, the security forces. That's going to be very important. So what they do will determine very much the course of the future of the Nicolás Maduro government, as well as Delcy Rodriguez and Jorge Rodriguez, but none of them are considered legitimate interlocutors by the democratic government, and rather democratic opposition of Venezuela, nor will they be considered interlocutors by Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State.
We're joined now by Scott Lucas, political analyst, University College Dublin. Scott, Trump says Maduro has been, quote, captured and flown out of the country. What other interests might Trump have in the region? Might he be seeking further regime changes?
First, let's say clearly that the Trump administration is seeking regime change in Venezuela. Indeed, there has been almost 30 years of tensions between the Venezuelan governments of Hugo Chavez and then Nicolás Maduro and successive U.S. administrations. The George Bush administration in the first years of the 21st century pursued regime change. What is different this time about the Trump administration is that there's other motives that are there as well. First of all, do not underestimate the personal motive of Donald Trump and his defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, to just look like tough guys, to just like do something for the sake of appearing to be aggressive. Secondly, Donald Trump, quite famously, has said that the U.S. can go in and seize the oil of other countries. He said it with respect to Iraq, and he said it with respect to Venezuela. But there is also the broader national security strategy of the Trump administration now, which they call the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, which effectively declares that the Western Hemisphere is a U.S. zone. America dominates it. And they could be using Venezuela as an example of this, that what the America says goes. This is not to ignore the serious issues with the Maduro regime, the serious issues regarding the Venezuelan economy, regarding political repression, regarding more than 3 Venezuelans who have fled. But this is an attempt by the Trump administration to exert its power and to try to topple this government in the process.
Do you think we can expect much resistance from Maduro's supporters?
Well, I think that's a key question right now, because the fact here is that it's not just an issue of Maduro supporters. It's also the people of Venezuela who might not like Maduro, might not like what he has done to the country, but they do not want to simply be carrying out the American demands to get rid of their own government. So the question here is whether they rise up to get rid of a government which is still in place, even if Maduro's gone. You've just heard from the Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez. The foreign minister, defense ministers are still in post. For months, the Trump administration has been trying to stir up the people of Venezuela to get rid of Maduro, to get rid of the government. But the people of Venezuela have not done that. So do they now say, oh, we have to do Washington's bidding, or do they rally behind their government? I don't want to make a prediction which way it goes, but at this point, I would say that I don't see any evidence at this point that you simply are going to get Venezuela's people to do the Trump administration's bidding and get rid of the government.
Who do you think might fill the power vacuum in a post-Maduro Venezuela?
I think we shouldn't go that far. I mean, I think to do that actually plays into what the Trump folks are trying to do. I think the fact here is you still have a government which is in place. You still have a government which is running the country, which is calling for resistance against the American operations. To simply declare that we're in a post-government phase just is inaccurate. Now, it is true that the Trump administration has been promoting opposition leaders in Venezuela for many years. The problem here is that when you promote those opposition leaders in Venezuela, do you actually give them more legitimacy because Donald Trump has given his seal of approval, or do you actually put a target on their backs that they become unacceptable? I think the emphasis here has to be able to maintain some sense of order and security in Venezuela, and to be honest with you, to try to hold a line against further military attacks. Because my fear is this, I don't think there'll be a full U.S. military invasion of Venezuela. I don't think the Trump administration has the stomach for that. But you do have the risk of insurrection, and you do have the risk of a complete breakdown, a civil breakdown within the country, with all the consequences that it means for more than 30 million people who do not want that type of economic and political instability.
There's reporting today, Scott, that despite the long buildup between, this strange relationship between the United States and Venezuela, that when this happened today, there was lots of shock around the country. Is this a turning point in Trump's presidency?
Look, Donald Trump's turning point could come on many fronts. I think the fundamental is still the U.S. economy. We're still talking about the Epstein case, which I think will be there throughout 2026. We have the complete scandals over his effectively attempt to pursue an authoritarian regime, whether it be in terms of deportation, detention of people, denial of rights. But let's bring this back here. I want to leave you with one contradiction here about Trump doing this. The Trump administration is going to put Nicolás Maduro on trial for narco-terrorism. using a 2020 indictment that he's behind bringing drugs into the United States. This same Trump administration a few weeks ago pardoned the former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was convicted of being involved in the importation of 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. We have fundamentally a question of a president and his administration exerting power for their own personal interest. Will the US people stand for that, despite all the contradictions? Well, that'll be a huge question in 2026, but it'll be secondary at this point to what faces Venezuelans today.
And we'll have to end it there. That's Scott Lucas, a political analyst from University College Dublin. Many thanks.